Picture yourself standing in the dark. No fire, no shelter. You don't know where you are. The sun set 2 hours ago and the temperature has already dropped 15 degrees. Somewhere behind you, something just moved. You heard it. You didn't see it. You have no weapon, you have no shoes, and you have exactly one night to figure out how to still be alive by morning. Now, before your brain starts planning, before you mentally reach for a spear or a shelter or a nice thick animal hide, I want you to stop. Because the thing most likely to kill you in 100,000 BC isn't out there in the dark. It's the scratch on your left hand you got 3 days ago that you haven't thought about since. Let's talk about what your brain is doing right now. Your brain is doing what every human brain does when confronted with the idea of prehistoric survival. It goes straight to the dramatic stuff. The predators, the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, which, for the record, were mostly extinct by 100,000 BC. But that's fine, your brain didn't get the memo, and honestly neither did most documentaries. Here is what you're picturing. You heroically fending off a cave lion with a sharpened stick. You outwitting a pack of hyenas with your superior modern intellect. You surviving on your wits and determination and whatever vague knowledge you absorbed from watching survival content at 2 in the morning. Here is what would actually happen. You would be dead. Probably not from a lion, probably not from a mammoth, probably not from anything impressive enough to tell a story about. You would be dead from something your doctor can fix in about 45 seconds with a prescription. Welcome to 100,000 BC. It's worse than you think. And the reasons are far more embarrassing than you'd like. Let's start with your first night, because your first night is already trying to kill you, and it has absolutely no interest in being dramatic about it. 100,000 BC in East Africa, where the fossil record firmly places most Homo sapiens during this period, with sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa and Jebel Sahaba in Morocco giving us the clearest picture. East Africa at this time sits mostly between 15 and 30 degrees Celsius during the day. Comfortable, pleasant even. You might think, fine, this isn't so bad. You're going to be okay. Then the sun goes down. Temperatures in the African savanna drop 15 to 20 degrees overnight. If you're on higher ground, which you want to be because predators hunt at the water's edge and in the valley floors after dark, it's colder still. You have no insulated clothing. You have whatever you're wearing right now, which in this scenario is approximately nothing useful. No sleeping bag, no tent, no body fat reserves built up over years of comfortable modern eating. Your core body temperature needs to stay above 35 degrees Celsius to keep you functional. Below 32, you stop shivering, which sounds like progress but is actually your body giving up. Below 30, you lose consciousness. Below 28, your heart stops. None of this takes very long. The people of 100,000 BC knew this. They had fire. Archaeological evidence from this period shows deliberate fire use at multiple sites across Africa and the Middle East, charred bone, ash deposits, structured hearths. They also had group sleeping. Huddling together at night was not optional sentimentality. It was survival mathematics. Without fire, without shelter, without other warm bodies nearby, your first night in 100,000 BC ends before sunrise. Not because of a predator, because of physics. Let's be generous. Let's say you find fire. You survive the night. Congratulations, you are now extremely thirsty. This is where things get quietly catastrophic. Water in 100,000 BC is not the water you're used to. There are no treatment plants, no filtration systems, no vaccines. The water you're about to drink from a river or a watering hole is shared with every animal in a 30-kilometer radius. Every animal that urinates in it, defecates near it, dies in it, and bloats in it upstream from where you're standing. It is, to put it scientifically, not great. Waterborne pathogens, bacteria like Vibrio cholerae and E. coli, parasitic protozoa like Giardia and Cryptosporidium, thrive in exactly this kind of unfiltered communal water source. Symptoms begin within 24 to 72 hours of exposure. Rapid fluid loss follows. Vomiting, diarrhea, Dehydration. Without intervention, a cholera-like illness can kill a healthy adult in 12 to 24 hours. Not 12 to 24 days. Hours. Paleoanthropologist Leslie Aiello and her colleagues have argued that waterborne disease was almost certainly one of the most consistent background killers in early human populations. Not dramatic, not visible in the fossil record, just relentlessly, quietly present. Every single day, a hum of mortality that never turned off. The humans of 100,000 BC had strategies. They preferred running water to stagnant pools. They learned over thousands of generations which sources were safer. They used certain plants with antimicrobial properties. Evidence at Jebel Cave suggests early knowledge of plant-based medicine. You have not had thousands of generations. You have been here since yesterday. Now, before the waterborne illness even gets a chance to kill you, something else has already moved in. Something so small you can't see it and so universal that you never had a chance to avoid it. Parasites. Intestinal worms, roundworms, hookworms, tapeworms were essentially universal in hunter-gatherer populations. Analysis of coprolites, which is the technical term for preserved ancient fecal matter, from archaeological sites across the world, consistently shows evidence of multiple simultaneous parasite infections. Not one worm, several. Living inside you, competing with your digestive system for the food you worked hard to find. Hookworms alone cause chronic anemia, robbing your blood of the iron it needs to carry oxygen. A body fighting hookworms is a body running at reduced capacity, slower, weaker, less able to fight off the next infection that comes along. Parasites don't usually kill you directly. They just make everything else significantly more likely to kill you. In 100,000 BC, you were not just you were you plus the ecosystem living inside you. Your immune system had made a kind of uneasy peace with it over a lifetime of exposure. But the moment any other stress arrived, a wound, a fever, a week of bad food, that peace broke, and then everything fell apart at once. Which brings us to the actual number one cause of death in prehistoric human populations. And I want you to brace yourself because this is the least glamorous thing I could possibly tell you. It was infection. From a small wound, a cut, a blister that broke open, a splinter that went deep, a cracked tooth. Because tooth infections were extraordinarily common in populations eating the abrasive, grit-contaminated diet of hunter-gatherers. Grain ground on stone, raw tubers, dried meat. And dental analysis of skeletal remains from this period consistently shows severe wear, abscess formation, and bone erosion around infected roots. A dental abscess in 100,000 BC doesn't end with a root canal and 2 weeks of antibiotics. It ends with bacteria entering your bloodstream. It ends with sepsis, the body's catastrophic full system response to infection it can no longer contain. And sepsis, even today with antibiotics and intensive care units and every tool modern medicine has ever built, kills roughly 1 in 5 people who develop it. In 100,000 BC, sepsis killed almost everyone it reached. Forensic paleopathologists studying skeletal collections from this period have documented infection as the primary cause of death in a significant proportion of individuals who survive past childhood. The signs are in the bone. Periosteal reactions, osteomyelitis, bone erosion around wounds that healed and wounds that didn't. Bones tell the story that medicine couldn't write yet. So here is the scenario your brain refused to generate when you thought about prehistoric survival. You are in 100,000 BC. You stepped on a sharp piece of flint yesterday. The cut seemed small. You washed it in the river, which, as we have established, was a catastrophically bad idea. Today, the skin around it is red and warm. Tomorrow, it is swollen. By day 5, you have a fever. By day 7, you are either recovering through sheer immune system luck, or your body has turned against itself in a way that no plant, no fire, and no amount of human care can reverse. That's it. That's how the story ends. Not a lion, not a mammoth, a piece of rock on the ground, a river that looked clean, and 3 days of bad luck. Now, violence, because it would feel dishonest to talk about 100,000 BC without mentioning the fact that other humans were a genuine, documented, non-trivial threat. Evidence of interpersonal violence in this period is real and well documented. The site of Jebel Sahaba in Sudan, dated to around 13,000 years ago, reflecting dynamics consistent with our period, shows a cemetery where roughly 40% of individuals had embedded projectile points or cut marks consistent with violent death. Anthropologist Lawrence Keeley, analysing violence across prehistoric populations, argued that the proportion of people dying from interpersonal conflict in prehistory was, per capita, higher than in most modern wars, which is an uncomfortable thing to know about our species. But here we are. Violence between groups was real. A raiding for resources, food, water access, territory was part of human life in the same way it remains part of chimpanzee life today. Your own group might protect you. An encounter with a different group in the wrong place at the wrong time might not end well. But here's the catch. Violence was episodic. It happened in bursts. It was not the constant background hum that infection and waterborne disease represented. You could go months without encountering a hostile group. You could not go 3 days without drinking water. There is one cause of death in 100,000 BC that deserves its own section, because it was so catastrophically reliable for half the population. Childbirth. Maternal mortality in pre-modern populations without obstetric care is estimated at between 1 and 3% per birth. That sounds manageable until you do the math. A woman in 100,000 BC might give birth 5 to 8 times. At 1 to 3% per birth, the cumulative lifetime risk of dying in childbirth climbs to somewhere between 5 and 24%, potentially 1 in 4 women. Neonatal mortality was even higher. Between 30 and 50% of children born in hunter-gatherer societies died before the age of 5. Not from predators, not from dramatic causes, but from the same mundane killers that hunted adults. And yet, the Neanderthal individual from Shanidar Cave in Iraq, dating to around 65,000 years ago, survived to old age with a withered arm, severe arthritis, and what appears to have been a significant head injury. He lived for years in that condition. Someone kept him alive. Someone chose to. That is not primitive. That is profoundly, recognizably human. They knew things were hard and they showed up for each other anyway. But knowing something kills you and being able to stop it are two entirely different things. So, here is the list your brain wanted. What would kill you in rough order of probability if you found yourself in 100,000 BC? First, and most likely, infection from a wound. A cut, a blister, a cracked tooth, sepsis from untreated bacterial infection, the single most reliable killer in human prehistory. Mundane, invisible, everywhere. Second, waterborne disease, cholera-adjacent illness from contaminated water, fast, brutal, and virtually inescapable without generational knowledge of which sources to avoid. Third, hypothermia, particularly in your first nights before you've established shelter and fire, particularly in winter, particularly at altitude. Fourth, parasitic disease. Malaria was present in Africa in this period. Genetic analysis of Plasmodium falciparum dates the parasite to at least 100,000 years ago. Malaria alone has killed more humans across the span of our history than almost any other single cause. Fifth, childbirth, if you're a woman of reproductive age. The cumulative lifetime risk was not small. Sixth, violence from other humans. Real, episodic, and significantly more likely than violence from any other species. Seventh, and last, the predator. The lion, the cave bear, the impressive, dramatic, documentary-worthy death that your brain went to immediately, and that was statistically one of the least likely ways for a healthy adult human to die. The people who actually lived in 100,000 BC were not fragile. They were extraordinarily resilient, physically stronger than most modern humans, with immune systems tuned to constant microbial exposure, with knowledge of their environment built across thousands of generations. They survived because they knew things that took millennia to learn. They survived because they had each other. The same social instincts that make humans occasionally violent also make us take care of injured strangers and share food with people who can't, hunt and stay awake through the night when someone's fever isn't breaking. They did not survive because prehistoric life was kind. They survived in spite of the fact that it categorically was not. What would kill you first in 100,000 BC is a question with an embarrassingly ordinary answer. Not the thing with claws, not the thing with tusks, the thing with no name, invisible to the naked eye, living in the water you're drinking or the soil beneath the cut on your hand. They faced it every single day. Without labs, without medicine, without any of the tools we now take completely for granted, and somehow, improbably, stubbornly, they made it anyway. Which is the only reason you're here to hear about it.